Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the fascinating and honestly mind-blowing mechanics of human vision. But we aren't just looking at this as some textbook piece of biology. No, we're going to treat the human eye for what it really is, a complex, highly sensitive, and ultimately vulnerable operating system. Let's get right into it. To really grasp how vision works, especially in high-stakes environments like, say, aviation maintenance, we've got to shift our perspective a bit. Think about the mechanical parts of an aircraft. We all know that rivets holding the aluminum skin to a fuselage have absolute limits, right? Apply enough force and they will eventually snap. Well, the human machine is absolutely no different. Our biological components have hard limitations too. Under stress and fatigue, our performance degrades, and yes, our vision can quite literally fail us. So here's our flight plan for this explainer. 1. The ultimate aviation tool. 2. Anatomy of the eye. 3. Visual acuity and clarity. 4. Blind spots and errors. 5. External threats to vision. And finally, number 6, the importance of color. Section 1. The ultimate aviation tool. It's kind of fascinating when you reframe how we look at the human worker. Think about an aircraft maintenance technician. They use their eyes to inspect incredibly complex electrical wiring or to spot microscopic hairline fractures in metal. So their vision is quite literally a matter of life and death for the passengers on that plane. If the human visual system misses a flaw on the ground, the mechanical system could fail in the air. The stakes are huge. Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of the Eye. The basic structure of the eye actually operates a lot like a simple camera. If we follow the journey of light, it first passes through the cornea. This is basically a clear window acting as a fixed focusing device. And get this, it handles a massive 70 to 80% of the eye's total light refraction. Next, the light hits the iris and the pupil. These work together like a camera's aperture, rapidly adjusting the amount of incoming light by a factor of up to 5 to 1. Pretty impressive, right? Then the light hits the lens. Now, the lens is surrounded by these tiny ciliary muscles that actually change its physical shape. It thickens to focus on near objects and flattens out for distant ones. We call this dynamic focusing accommodation. And finally, all that perfectly focused light lands on the retina, which is basically the highly sensitive camera film at the back of the eyeball. But there's this amazing sort of biological handoff that happens right there on the retina. The retina is packed with two totally distinct types of light-sensitive nerve cells, cones and rods. Right in the center, in an area called the fovea, we have our cones. Cones are what give us our ability to see fine detail and distinguish about 1,000 different shades of color. The catch? They need really good light to work. But as you move out toward the edges of the retina, the cones fade out and the rods take over. Now, rods can't detect color at all. They only see in black, white, and gray. But they are incredibly sensitive to low light and are absolute rock stars at detecting movement out of the corner of your eye. So, as daylight fades to dusk, your visual system literally passes the processing baton from the color-loving cones to the low-light rods. All right, Section 3, Visual Acuity and Clarity. To really put the eye's processing power into perspective, consider this. There are approximately 1.2 million nerve cells leading directly from your retinas straight to the visual cortex in your brain. That is a massive, massive data pipeline. It's honestly a staggering biological achievement when you stop to think about it. Let's compare that to your hearing for a second. Your inner ear, it only has about 50,000 nerve cells transmitting data. So this biological reality makes your visual system roughly 24 times more sensitive than your auditory system. 24 times! No wonder we're such visual creatures. So the crucial point here is how we actually measure all this sensitivity. We call it visual acuity, which is just a fancy way of saying your ability to discriminate sharp detail at varying distances. You've definitely heard someone say they have 20/20 vision, right? Or 6x6 if you're using meters. This just means you can clearly see at 20 feet what a supposedly normal person can see at that exact same distance. But here's the kicker. Having 20/20 acuity does not guarantee you'll see everything perfectly. True visual clarity relies heavily on environmental cues, things like how much an object contrasts against its background, its relative motion, and even its angle from you. The environment plays a huge role. Which brings us to Section 4, Blind Spots and Errors. Believe it or not, our incredible visual hardware actually comes with some built-in bugs. See, because the optic nerve enters the retina right smack between the rods and cones, it creates a physical blind spot. Literally a patch where there are 0 light-sensitive cells. You can actually try this right now. Close your left eye, stare at a specific point with your right, and slowly move closer. At some point, an object right next to your focal point will just magically vanish. Boom, you found your blind spot. Now, we don't walk around noticing this missing data because our brains are clever. They use binocular vision, combining the images from both eyes, to essentially Photoshop and fill in the blanks. Plus, your eyes are constantly making these rapid micro-movements, called saccades, which helps mask the blind spot. But if something flushes super fast right in that one specific spot, your brain will completely miss it, like it never even happened. Aside from the blind spot, the actual physical shape of your eyeball dramatically alters how well it functions. Actually, scratch that. It dictates how it functions. If your eyeball is even slightly shorter than normal, the image ends up forming behind the retina. This causes hyperopia, or what we commonly call farsightedness, which requires a convex lens to correct. On the flip side, if your eyeball is a bit too long, the image forms in front of the retina. That's myopia, or nearsightedness, and you need a concave lens to bend that light outwards and fix the focus. We also can't forget the physical imperfections and medical conditions that degrade our visual acuity over time. We're talking about cataracts, which cause the lens to cloud up as we age, or astigmatism, where a misshapen cornea basically warps your view of the world. Then there's glaucoma, where built-up fluid pressure physically crushes that delicate optic nerve. And even something like a severe migraine can cause intense, totally debilitating visual disturbances. The system is definitely fragile. Let's look at Section 5, External Threats to Vision. Okay, so now we're really starting to see how vulnerable this whole setup is. External stressors can seriously compromise our vision. Take smoking, for example. Did you know the carbon monoxide in cigarette smoke actually builds up in your bloodstream and reduces oxygen to your eyes? This mild hypoxia rapidly impairs the sensitivity of those low light rods we talked about. Then you've got the lingering effects of alcohol or certain medications. What about glare from really bright lighting? That actually disproportionately affects older folks. Plus, there are airborne particles like dust and mist constantly bombarding us. And if you wear contact lenses, leaving them in while working in a dusty environment causes severe drying and irritation. It's exactly why opticians strongly tell you to limit wear to about 8 to 12 hours. But perhaps the most dangerous external factor of all is sudden lighting changes. Imagine that aviation technician again, walking out of a super bright hangar right onto a pitch black tarmac. Because their eyes have fully adapted to the bright light, they are practically blind in the shadows. It actually takes a full 30 minutes for the rods in their retinas to completely adapt to the dark. Half an hour? For that entire time, their peripheral and low-light vision is severely compromised. That is a massive window for error. And finally, Section 6, the importance of color. We have to remember that color isn't just pretty. Color is data. Good color vision is absolutely required for recognizing specific components, telling the difference between a tangle of complex electrical wires or spotting airfield warning lights. Yet color defective vision, which is usually hereditary and mostly impacts the ability to tell red from green, is surprisingly common. It affects roughly 8% of men, though interestingly only about 0.5% of women. People with this condition often see those problem colors as washed out, neutral shades of gray, especially when the lighting is poor. But hey, even if you weren't born with a hereditary color deficiency, your color processing is still going to degrade. It's just a fact of life. Simply aging causes the physical lens of your eye to progressively turn yellow over time. This natural yellowing acts exactly like a permanent physical filter built into your eye, making it increasingly harder for all of us to distinguish between blues and yellows as we get older. So we've explored this incredibly delicate 1.2 million pixel machinery of the cornea, the lens, and the retina. We've seen exactly how this remarkable system can be tricked by blind spots, blurred by its own shape, suffocated by carbon monoxide, and totally blinded by sudden darkness. All of this leaves us with a pretty critical thought to end on today. Considering the strict biological limits of our own human performance, what unrecognized external factors and stressors are degrading your own visual system right now? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this helps you see things just a little bit more clearly.